Hey, you ever heard of movies? I have. I'm Jeremy Kessler, and I'm real good at having opinions. Here's a list of all my opinions, all of them, that I've ever had, in the form of my top 10 movies of 2018. This should really go without saying, but this list is my opinion. And of course, I didn't see every movie this year. I want this list to be more of like a recommendation of the movies that I saw this year, that I want you to go out and see too. Don't take it as being a definitive list of the best movies that happened.
Because that's my list.
Because that's Oliver's list. These are movies that I liked. I think you should see them too. I could stand here and try to think of other ways to preface this, but there's no reason not to just get straight into it.
Number 10.
I don't like that. We shouldn't do that. Actually, at number 10 is a movie that I just saw and didn't have a lot of expectations for.
Off we go.
Friends of mine that have seen this movie were underwhelmed, but when I walked out of it, I just had this pure joy. When it comes down to it, plenty of sequences in this movie are just good fun and lighthearted. We saw this movie in a very empty theater, and one person really liked this movie. At the very end of this movie, a person in the audience with us clapped very loudly 3 times. And I love it. I just like to imagine that in this person's head they thought everybody in the theater was going to clap, but nobody else did. It also sounded like they stood up to clap, so they were just like... And now I feel like I need to end every movie like that. At number 9 is another movie from this year that I thought was just good fun. Tag. So, Tag is a movie about a bunch of friends that have been playing tag for years. To me, this movie is just incredibly funny and delightfully silly. It's interesting because this movie does one of my least favorite plot things, which is a love triangle. And it does it in a way that I enjoyed. I wanted to call the sequences with Jeremy Renner fun. Like the slow motion ones, but I said fun like 3 times already. It had a really great cast and felt fresh in an age of comedies that I usually don't find very funny. Oh, Next on the list is Sorry to Bother You.
Oh yeah! Alright!
Depending on who you are, Sorry to Bother You is either too intelligent for me to get into right now, or too weird for me to explain to you why without ruining the movie. I definitely have not seen another movie like this in the theater. Look, watching the trailer, it's about a guy that gets a job as a telemarketer and he works his way up in the company, and stuff gets really crazy.
Use your white voice.
Hey, Mr. Kramer, this is Langston from Regalview.
Which sounds really generic, but you have to trust me on this. The movie is unique and really interesting. There's really not more that I could say without ruining this movie, so really you should just watch it. Fuck. Number 6 is actually a movie that I didn't hear about until we went to see it. Mid-90s. This movie's very relatable. Oliver talked about this in his top 10 and how a lot of these things are things that he did. I did not do these things. I was a good boy. But I can relate to how much the main character tries to fit into a new group of people. Even though I was born in the late 90s, it was a really great movie and it spoke to me. Number 5 is a movie that I was really expecting to not be good, and it's Paddington 2.
No. It's a 2017 release. IMDb says so.
In the States, this movie came out in January of 2018, and this is my list, not yours. Paddington 2 is a 2018 release, and I love this movie.
Some bullshit.
Paddington 2 is one of those movies that just has no right to be as good as it is. You get so many movies like this with the Smurfs and Christopher Robin where they try to take an older cartoon and put it in live action, and it's never good. And the sequels are always significantly worse than the first one. Take notes, The Squeakquel, and Chipwrecked, and Alvin and the Chipmunks Road Chip. The fuck they made so many of these for? And honestly, I didn't see Paddington 1. Paddington 2 was a goddamn delight. And I'm so surprised by that. I love that bear. Before we move on to number 4, I feel like I should say something. I love superheroes, and I love superhero movies. But as much as I love them, a lot of superhero movies came out this year, and you could make an entire top 10 of just the superhero movies that came out in 2018. And I did. So for that reason, I limited myself to only one superhero movie for this list, and I thought a lot about it, and at the end of the day, there's only one that I'm still thinking about at the end of the year, and that's Infinity War. Before even talking about how good this movie is, this is such an accomplishment for cinematic universes and what they can be when done right. But past that, this movie is just really entertaining. I really thought that my own hype would ruin this movie, but it lived up to my expectations in every way that I wanted it to. Alright, we're getting into serious business now, the top 3. These are the movies that I really liked. My pick for number 3 is A Star is Born. This movie's really tough for me in that I really don't like remakes, but this is really good, despite it being the 3rd iteration of this movie. And aside from that, I really love Lady Gaga. I really wasn't into her pop music from when I was growing up, but I found all this other stuff that she had done.
I love the free, fresh wind in my hair. It's a bay of publicity, destruction going viral.
And I really love all that other stuff. And she's so talented. And then I found this trailer and it just had me so excited. And she's fantastic in this movie. As an added bonus, the music in this movie is really good, and I'm still listening to some of it. Coming in at number 2 is a movie about one of my favorite things. I love dogs. I've just been informed that the movie is Isle of Dogs. Isle of Dogs is a beautifully animated stop-motion movie. Honestly, I still love watching those Facebook videos about how they made this movie. Stop-motion animation is such a time-consuming process, and you really have to put a lot of love into what you're doing. Or else it's not going to come out good. And this movie came out great. It's got an all-star cast of Ed Norton, Jeff Goldblum, Bill Murray, Bryan Cranston, a 5th guy. I really love the way that this movie does language, and it all comes together to make a really heartwarming tale about dogs. Before we get to number 1, I have to come clean. I lied to you. I put 2 superhero movies on this list. My number 1 spot, the movie that I've seen the most times this year at a record of 4, is of course Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Just think about that. This movie came out less than a month ago and I've seen it 4 times. Do I have a problem? I have to say it, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but the art in this movie is beautiful. At the end of the day though, I think the thing that really puts this movie at number 1 for me is that the messages really spoke to me. It's not just a great Spider-Man movie, or just a great animated movie, it's a great movie. And this isn't really about how good the movie was, but this felt like a really satisfying send-off to Stan Lee. Well, that's the end of my list, and honestly all these movies are really good and you should see them if you haven't. Really any of them could have gone at any spot of this list. 2 of my friends also made top 10 lists for movies this year, and I'm also going to make a bottom 10 of movies this year. If you want to see more in-depth reviews of these movies, I'm going to leave a playlist in the description of the ride home reviews of any of these movies that we did. We didn't get all of them. Anyway, I gotta figure out how to get home.
Nice.
Let's get started. She's fantastic in this movie.